In JavaScript, the variables are available in three scopes. The scope is the lifetime of the variable. It specifies in which area the variable is alive and where the variable is not accessible. We have mainly three types of scopes for the variables, that is global variables, local variables, and block level variables. The global variables are declared outside the function either with var or let. So, you are writing var or let keyword outside the function. In both cases, you will get global variables only, which are available till end of the same program. For example, there is a JavaScript file that contains thousands of lines of program. These global variables are available anywhere within the same file. And we have a function here, and the function can receive the input values in the form of arguments or parameters. These parameters are local scoped, which are accessible within the same function only. Once the function closes, the scope of the parameter ends. That means outside that function, those parameters or arguments are not available. You can set or get the values from the parameters within the same function only. And inside the function, you can declare the variables either by using the var or let keyword. In both cases, you will get local variables only, which are available till end of the same function. So, the variables which are declared inside the function either with var keyword or let keyword are accessible till end of the same function. So, in simple words, if the variable is declared inside the function, you call it as local variable, which is accessible within the same function only. And the variables that are declared outside the function are called as global variables, and those are accessible till end of the same program, that is within the same JavaScript file. And finally, let us try to talk about block level variables. For example, we have the block, that is if block. In place of if block, you can assume any other block such as while loop block, do while loop block, for loop block, or any other block such as a try block or catch block. So whenever you declare a variable inside the block, that is called block level variable. But the block level variables can only be created by using let keyword, but not with var keyword. So you try to remember like the var keyword doesn't support the block level variable, supports only the local scope and the global scope. But the let keyword supports global, local, or even block level variable scope. The meaning of the block level variable scope is the block variables are accessible within the same block only. So within the same area of the block, you can access the block level variable. Once the block has been closed, that is end of the lifetime of the block level variable. But inside the block, if you try to use the var keyword, that will not declare the block level variable. So it declares the local variable. So these local variables are available even after closing the block. That is till end of the same function. So, in short, global scope means the complete JavaScript file. Local means only within the same function. And block level is within the same block. So these are the three scopes of variables that you should remember while working with JavaScript. And moreover, it is not advisable to set same variable name even for local and global, otherwise block and local. And in case if there is a same name for local as well as global variable, in JavaScript there is no way to access the global variable. And moreover, if you talk about hoisting is a concept of lifting up the variable declaration to the top of the program, right? But in this case, global variables are hoisted to top of the program and the local variables are hoisted to the top of the same scope, that is to beginning of the function. So you remember like a variable scope will be hoisted up to top of the same scope only, not always to top of the program. Let me demonstrate all this practically. So let us try to create a file that is scope.js. So in this case, if you try to declare a variable here, this is by default called as global variable. And even if you try to use the var keyword also, it is also a global variable because we are declaring the variables outside the function. And there is a function here. And inside the function, you try to declare the variables. This is local variable by default, which is available till end of the same function. And if you try to use the let keyword also, it is also called as local variable. There is no difference here. So as of the global as well as local scope, there is no much difference between var and let. They are almost same, so we can interchange anything. And there is a small difference between let and var here. The variables that are declared with var keyword will be hoisted up automatically, but the variables of var keyword will not be hoisted up. They are available starting from the place where it is declared till end of the same scope. But let keyword is very specific for declaration of block level variable, that is inside any kind of block such as if block or for loop block. So there is some condition, ignore that condition. Inside the block, if you try to use the var keyword, that is called local variable only, which is available till end of the same function. But if you try to use the let keyword inside the block, that is the exact block level variable, or you can say block variable, which is available till end of the same block only, but not outside. So these are the three scopes in JavaScript. As of now, we have not yet used a console.log statement, so there is no any kind of output here. And let's try to print all these variable values. Let's try to access A and B. I am trying to interchange the names. So here I would like to print A and B. So there is a small difference here. The variable of the let keyword cannot be accessible above the declaration. It's because JavaScript doesn't hoist the variables that are declared with let keyword. The hoisting is applicable only for var keyword. So that is the reason you cannot access the variable B above the declaration, but you can access the value of A, but of course it is undefined by default. So if you try to print A and B individually, A is accessible, but B is not accessible here. It's because the variables of let keyword will not be hoisted up. So check the output again. You can see the value of A because it is hoisted to top of the program by default. But the variables of let keyword will not be hoisted up, so that the variable B is not accessible above the declaration. That is one difference between var and let keyword here. Except this fact, there is no much difference between var and let. Alright, let me comment this statement. And of course, after the declaration, obviously, you can access either of these A and B. And in this case, you will get the updated values, that is 10 and 20. So for the first case, we are getting undefined, that is before the initialization. But later, you are trying to access the A and B, it works. It gives you the updated values of both variables. And inside the function, you can access the A and B because those are global variables. Global variables are accessible inside the function, and outside the function also everywhere. But let us try to use the C and D values also. The same rule is applicable. That means the let keyword declaration will not be hoisted up to top of the function. So as you can guess, the D is not accessible because the let keyword will not be hoisted up. Check it out. Oops, we have to call the function, right? So let's call the function at the bottom. Alright. So as you can see, these are the values of A and B, that is 10 and 20. And the value of C is undefined because the C is getting initialized in this line number 16. But above the initialization, the default value of the var variables is undefined. It's okay. But the variables of the let keyword will not be hoisted up. So those variables remain inaccessible above the declaration. So before declaring the variables of let, that variable is inaccessible within this function. That is why we are getting error near the console.log of D. Alright. Of course, after the declaration, you can access either of those values. So let's print some comments also. This is before global variables and this is after global variables. And this is before local variables and this is after local variables. And of course, the D variable is not accessible here. So let me comment it out. In case if you uncomment this statement, you must get error. So we are getting the output correctly, that is before, after global variables, before local, and after local. Now let us access these variables inside the block. That is, before declaration of block level variables, let's try to access all those. Of course, all of those variables are accessible even here. But in addition, let's try to access this E and F. As you can guess, E is accessible here because E is declared with var keyword. But the variable F is not accessible here because it is declared with let keyword. So what I'm trying to say is that the let keyword variables will not be hoisted up. So let's run this. So we are getting the output of before global, after global, before local, and after local. And we are not getting the output of before block level variables. It's because this condition is false, right? Let us try to give a condition that is true. So I am trying to give the condition like C equal to C. So let's check again. See, we are getting all these output, that is before global, after global, before local, and after local. Even we are getting the output of before block level variables. We can access all these variables A, B, C, D, even the variable E, which is undefined by default. But you cannot access the variable F. It's because it is declared with let keyword, so it will not be hoisted up. Of course, you can access all the variables after declaration of the block level variables. And of course, you can declare the variables anywhere. There is no need of declaring the variables only at the beginning of the function or only at the beginning of the block. You can declare the variables anywhere, wherever you want. So here we are getting errors, so I'm trying to comment it out. But the same is accessible after the declaration. So here it should work. Let's check it out. So we are getting all the output and before block level variables we are getting the output, and after block level variables also we are getting the output, including the variable f. And once the block is closed here, you cannot access the block level variables. Their lifetime ends there itself. So after completion of the block, you cannot access the block level variables, but you can access the local as well as global variables as usual. So I am trying to access here, that is after the block within the function. You can access all the global as well as local variables, but you cannot access the block level variables here because that is end of the block. And here this is end of the function. So after completion of the function, you can access only the global variables but not local. So you will not be able to access the variables c and d because the variables c and d are the local variables. So after completion of the end of the function, you cannot access them. So finally, let's try to check it out. So in this area, global variables are accessible. And in this entire area within this function, you can access the global as well as local variables. And especially in this area, in addition, you can access the block level variables, even global as well as local variables. And the point is, the let keyword variables will not be hoisted up. So before the declaration of a variable with let keyword, you cannot access that variable because those variables will not be hoisted up. And moreover, in case if there is a parameter, this parameter variable works exactly just like local variables, that is accessible within the same function everywhere but not outside. This is all you need to know about local, global and block level variables in JavaScript. And let me change this text as after global. And let's call the function above printing the variables. Alright. So finally, let's check the output here. So we are getting all the output, that is before global, after global, before local, after local, before block level variables and after block level variables, and after the block within the same function, and finally after global variables outside the function. This must be outside the function. Alright, this is all you need to understand about different scope of the variables in JavaScript, that is global, local and block level variables.